In this video, we're going to discuss the Bradley effect. And this is a picture of Tom Bradley, the former mayor of California, and he ran for governor back in 1982. And he's known for coining the term the Bradley effect because of his actually unfortunate experience in running for governor. In 1982, he was running for governor against a Republican white candidate, George DeMajan. And in the weeks and months leading up to the election, the polls had him slated to win. They were predicting Bradley to win at a pretty significant margin. But after the polls had closed and the election day was over, they actually came back. The results came back not in favor of Tom Bradley. In fact, the Republican white candidate George DeMajan was governor, and people were deeming it an upset and asking how could this happen. He was again picked to win, and when economists and politicians and people who were developing theories on this started to really look at the data and what it was showing, they came up with this term called the Bradley effect, and they attribute his loss in 1982 and the loss of other politicians to this thing called the Bradley effect. So, what is the Bradley effect? And the first thing you want to start with is to understand that as humans, we have this certain trait of being socially desirable, meaning we want to come across obviously as good people. We want to always act in the right manner, and we never want to give the perception that we think or believe in a philosophy that isn't right. So the Bradley effect is when, and given this example with Tom Bradley and George DeMajan, were people who show support for the non-white candidate for reasons to keep people in their conversations or people they're debating with from thinking that they are racist, quite frankly. So sometimes the non-white candidates will actually get higher ratings in the polls because of this Bradley effect. Or people will just say they're undecided. They're not sure who they're going to vote for, even though in the back of their mind, in this case, they knew that they were going to vote for Dumajian, but kept this out of conversation, whether it be at the workplace or the dinner table or public speaking, whatever it is, for just to save themselves the sake of being even thought of as some sort of racist. This is definitely a bias in how people respond to surveys, and it's one that's unique in that it's a social desirability bias. That term is not entirely important to know, but it's the technical term that we're going to use to describe this bias. Now, the reason we study it, this Bradley effect, is that it's still in play today, and we see it just in a different way, in a different light. And one of the examples goes back to actually more than 10 years ago now, the 2008 Democratic presidential campaign. And this is obviously before the election, when, of course, the Democratic Party is trying to figure out who they would want as their candidate to run for president. And the polls were heavily in favor, excuse me, of Barack Obama. In fact, he had just won the Iowa caucus, and again had shown that he was dominating the field over his opponent Hillary Clinton. They predicted another win in New Hampshire by a landslide. They thought that Obama was going to win big. He had just won the Iowa caucus, and now he's going to New Hampshire, and politicians and pollsters were saying that he was going to win overwhelmingly. The opposite, in fact, happened. Hillary Clinton won the New Hampshire primary by 3%, and it shocked everybody. As they started digging a little bit deeper, they found that this here was the Bradley effect coming to surface again, where people in New Hampshire were, we'll say, overestimating or not representing what their true favorite was to win, and they were saying, we're voting for Barack Obama, we want him to win, or saying that they were going to vote for him when in fact behind closed doors, when push comes to shove and they are in the voting booth, they press the button for Hillary Clinton. Again, they do this to not be labeled as someone who is racist or against having a black president. Fast forward 8 years, and we see it at a much grander stage. So the first example we looked at was for the California governor. Then we looked at it for the Democratic presidential candidate. Here in 2016, we actually saw it for the presidential election. Now, your first thought is, well, these are two white candidates. It's not the Bradley effect. And you're right, but some politicians and pollsters call it a Bradley effect 2.0, but they've been looking at this most recent election as sort of another, we'll say another tangent of that social desirability bias, where our winner of Donald Trump, leading up to the election especially, was associated as being somebody who was politically incorrect. And whether you agree with him or not, wasn't afraid to turn to social media. He just did not act at times always politically correct. So this was something new to the, I shouldn't say new, but at least to the presidential scene. This is something new. Behaving this way, acting this way, talking this way, and still getting a good fan base and getting I shouldn't say a fan base, a voter base. Even going back to the debates they had with other Republican candidates, Donald Trump was not afraid to get personal. One of the debates that sticks out in the back of my mind, when him and Jeb Bush were going at it pretty good, and Bush, who obviously comes from a very political family and was brought up again to be very politically correct, and his nature is very presidential, going against all of a sudden this Donald Trump character who again doesn't have much background in politics, but is more of a financial guru and real estate tycoon. So we saw it firsthand where to the stranger and to someone not informed, that Donald Trump here is someone who might be a bit of a bully, or somebody who is not presidential. So there was, I wouldn't say it was the most positive tone that was connected with him leading up to the election, and a lot of pollsters were predicting a Hillary Clinton victory by a long shot. And we talked actually about Adam Silver, an editor for 538.com, who predicted the 2008 election. He was 50 for 50 in electoral college votes. In 2012, he was 49 for 50. And so, I mean, if you had to pick somebody who was the Rain Man of presidential elections, Nate Silver would be your guy. And leading up to 2016, he actually pegged Hillary Clinton to win at a 72% rate. So he gave her a 72% probability of winning 2016 election. We all know what happened. Obviously, Donald Trump won, and again, pollsters and politicians are chalking this up as another form of the Bradley effect, where you saw people overestimating a vote for Hillary Clinton or undecided because they just didn't want to admit in public or again at the dinner table or with family and friends that they wanted Donald Trump to be their president. But again, behind closed doors, no one else needs to know who you're voting for. And it truly comes down to who you side with. And in this case, obviously in 2016, we saw the Electoral College favor Donald Trump. So that, again, in a couple cases there, is the Bradley effect.